Hi, Shuli, and welcome to my very first little kind of client podcast. I really was interested in letting the wider community and people like yourself, like normal people who would hire a personal trainer,
Mhm.
to kind of hear from the client's point of view why they decided to take a non-diet approach. Because there's lots of podcasts around where it's other experts and other personal trainers talking to each other, but I wanted other clients to hear it from the client perspective, to kind of help them make a decision as to whether a non-diet approach would be more suitable for them rather than
Mhm.
the alternative of the mainstream fitness industry. And just to give a bit of a background, you've been my client for a few years now. And it's been amazing to work with you and to be able to like see the transformation. But I wonder if you could tell our viewers a little bit about that in your own words. So to start with, it would be, what was your relationship previously before you discovered a non-diet approach to exercise?
Well, I'm a retired yoga teacher and I had been doing yoga for a long time. And that was kind of, I had chosen yoga because it was, my relationship with exercise was always unsatisfying. And I had picked yoga because it was a different way of moving my body that didn't involve getting sweaty or having to move to the beat. um, but then I was unaware of what was happening in my body, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But my relationship with yoga also, as I became less and less able, I had retired from teaching because it was just so conflicted around, appropriation and of cultural appropriation and the incursion of the white wellness uh, philosophy and teachers into the yoga tradition. So I had retired from that, but I still had my own practice, my own personal practice. But as I became less and less and less able to engage in the forms of yoga, my cat is like acting like she's going to jump onto this, and I don't want
We
her
might
to.
get a little cameo
She's going
from
to knock
me.
everything down. Um, and as I understood more about the incursion of white wellness into it, and the what was a yoga body, and there was a
Mhm.
big campaign about this is a yoga body to include all different bodies in the vision of yoga. Still, my relationship became more and more and more conflicted as I became less and less and less able to engage in the forms,
Mhm.
because there was still performative, there was still competition, there was still like an ideal, um, and there was no way that I could engage in traditional exercise because it brought up so much difficulty for me as I got older. And, well, just to begin with,
Yeah.
but then I used to be a Weight Watchers trainer, okay, like a Weight Watchers group leader.
Okay.
And, there was a time at which I said, I'm not going to eat in a way like with Weight Watchers, the name of the game for me was to make sure I was full.
Mhm.
And so, it was eating to fill my body, not to nourish my body.
Yeah.
So when I left that behind and went into like eating to nourish my body, then I realized I was not going to do exercise to engage in changing the way my body looked. And so I was like, well, now what? I've
Yeah.
got nothing. I have no options. And then I became aware of the whole non-diet approach to physical activity.
Mhm.
And so I started looking.
To touch on that, what you just said, I think that's an experience that so many of us go through when we break away from these beliefs that we've been taught of diet culture, and let's face it, starving ourselves, being as small as we possibly can. Um,
It's abuse.
but
It's abusing our bodies.
it really is. And like when you let go of that, you can be in a space of like, what now? Like what?
That's exactly where I was. I was like, what? Like what? Yeah.
Like there's because we don't know how to exercise or eat without this goal of punishment and trying to be smaller.
Without rules and restrictions and
Mhm.
prescriptions and you must and should. Like all of a sudden when there are no rules, then what? Like and how do you I knew I didn't want to work with somebody who was going to make me feel like shit about myself. I knew
Mhm.
that. But I didn't know, well, I knew, first of all, I knew that I wanted a way of moving that supported me. And I knew that I needed help for that, but I didn't know where to go,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
do you feel that you kind of discovered that through Instagram
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah.
100%. 100%. I'm on Instagram for business reasons because I have a business. And so I love social media for the social aspect of things. And so I started following non-diet dietitians, like
Mhm.
non-diet folks who were working in the area. And then I became aware that there was such a thing as non-diet fitness or movement support. So I started like following the hashtags and just paying attention to what, but also I have a particular political orientation
Mhm.
around like oppression and structural oppression. So there are lots of people proliferating in the so-called, I don't know, body freedom or body acceptance, who don't understand the intersecting systems of oppression and how they impact people in different bodies, you know,
Yeah.
bodies that differ from the status quo, from the norm. Um, so, you know, it took a long time of really paying attention before I found people whose content I found nourishing. And it was definitely Instagram, though, that led the way for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that. And I think let's be quite frank that diet culture is an extension of white supremacy. And I
Yes, it
think
is.
a lot of people are scared to say that, but it's the truth. And therefore, that makes the mainstream fitness industry extremely exclusive.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who feel like they don't have never belonged and that fitness is not for them to be able to engage in a way that is supportive and nourishing. So that's what I love about the non-diet approach. It's we're speaking on not just an individual basis, but like a collective. It's a collective issue, isn't it? Of
It
like,
is a collective, it's a
yeah,
community, 100%. And I'll when this is public, because people question the relationship between diet culture and white supremacy. And we just made this really bold statement, and people are going to go, oh, come on. But I would refer people to a book called Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina. I think her last name is Strings.
mm-hmm.
And I am going to put in the comments a referral to her, reference to her book so that people can
Yeah,
look at it, and also a reference to a really good interview with her so that if people aren't game for reading a book, but they want the idea, they can
mm-hmm.
listen to the podcast.
Definitely. I definitely started to make my own connections with it through following work like Sabrina Strings and the revolutionaries that have come before me that paved the way for this kind of work. So um once you start to learn about what white supremacy, see it's pretty much connected to everything to
Everything.
do
It's the root of
and
everything.
especially to
Yeah.
do with our bodies. Um so to be part of a non-diet approach feels extremely revolutionary as well, like I must say. So
Yeah.
um
It's political action in its own way.
it's
Yeah.
like an act of resistance as well, isn't it? Of like
Yes.
we are not going to punish my body in the name of
Yeah.
diet culture and all these rules that have been imposed on us without our permission,
Yeah.
and
It's
that do not
interesting.
serve us.
Yeah. I remember this has to do with hair, but it's related. So I remember I was in a line to at a retreat at the meal line, and there was a woman behind me, and I sort of recognized her, and I went, "Hey, wait a minute, aren't you so and so?" She's a kirtan, a recording artist. Kirtan is the call and response singing in the yoga tradition. And I'm like, "Aren't you so and so?" And she goes, "But I didn't really recognize her because her hair was all silvery."
Mhm.
And I said, "Oh, you've allowed your natural hair." And I've been silvery since my 30s. And she goes, "Yes, I've let myself go." And then she said, "Wait a minute, I don't like that." She said, "I want to say it this way. I've let myself go."
Yes.
You know, the liberation
Mhm.
in like when we say, "Oh, well, she really let herself go," which means she's fat. It means that her hair, she doesn't go to the stylist. She
Mhm.
doesn't wear makeup. She maybe wears whatever clothes she wants, right? The implication is that there's some restriction in which we need to participate
Mhm.
and that it's bad. Well, she's let herself go. But no, I have let myself go.
Yeah.
I've let myself take up space physically, let my body be the shape I wanted it to be, let my
Mhm.
hair be the color it wants to be. Just, and I really love that when yes, I've let myself go,
Yeah.
and that's really what the non-diet approach to me is. That's what liberation means, is freeing myself, letting myself go. All
Mhm.
of us letting ourselves go.
Yeah.
Go.
Go and find the things that work for us, that
Yes.
are
Yeah.
supportive. To come to that part, how has the non-diet approach impacted you and your life since? Now, I know that it's because I think people need to realize as well, it can be a process. It can be hard in
Yes.
the beginning, and and those thoughts that we had don't always go away. It's about, we have to recognize that we have to put some work in and be
Yeah.
able to kind of reframe our thoughts and talk about it when they come up, and it can take a while,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
worth it. So
Yeah.
if you could let people know how
Yeah.
it
So
helped you.
in my yoga practice, when I was unable to do the forms the way I had been taught them, I would cry. I
Mhm.
would feel, my inner criticizing process, my internalized critical voice would give me a hard time, and I would feel blue all day.
Mhm.
Like it was really, and I would shit talk myself about being old and fat, and sedentary,
Yeah.
that it was all my fault. So then I didn't want to feel that way anymore, but I still wanted to move my body. So I
Mhm.
started to work with you
Yes.
because you fit the criteria that I was looking for. And at this point, I still did not know what was going on. I was blaming myself for being fat and sedentary, that
Mhm.
those were my fault. And I'm going to get choked up about it.
It's emotional.
It is emotional. To be held with another person who was gentle and who had all the space for me and my body to be just the way they were, who understood that I wanted something, that I was gun shy, so to speak,
Mhm.
and that I wanted just a place where I could begin to develop a different relationship, was very, makes me think of a teddy bear. Like what it feels like, the comfort you have when you hug your teddy bear when you're distressed when you're a kid, it was really very sweet. And then not long after we started working together, a number of months, I became aware that I had severe arthritis in my
Mhm.
hip and needed a hip replacement, and had needed it for quite some time.
Yeah, that
Which
was
and
quite.
that was the cause, not the fatness, not
Mhm.
the oldness, not my sedentary lifestyle. There was a structural issue with my body that meant that it needed to move in different ways, and it needed support for moving in different ways.
Mhm.
And so right away, you supported me in finding that, ways of doing what my body could do, and that I could feel good about it. And that was like from the start. But then when I hit that wall around, well, fudge, I need a hip replacement.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, now what? And then as my condition, because I had to wait 15 months, because we're in
Yeah.
Canada, we have a national health system somewhat like yours, where if you're not dying, you have to wait a while. You'll get
Yeah.
your care, but you'll have to wait a while. So I had to wait 15 months for my
Mhm.
hip surgery. And in that process, of course, it became like eventually I was not able to walk or
No.
bear any weight on that one leg. And still, we like before that, I was trying to walk every day and I was getting really discouraged. And you gave me ways I could track my walking experience
Mhm.
that were not achievement oriented, but to still have a sense of that I was getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And then of course and then we hit the wall around the hip surgery. Then we worked around strengthening what could work so that I could be ready for the surgery.
Yeah.
Um, and my mental health took a serious dive during those 15 months, because being unable to walk is extraordinarily
Mhm.
difficult. Um, and an important aspect of the little glimmers of good mental health were the work when I would work with you and still become aware of what my body could do,
Yeah.
right? And like have a different experience for 20 minutes a few times a week. That was like empowering.
It feels quite revolutionary just hearing you say it back, because throughout that time we didn't stop. Like, as in,
No,
we did what because they're very much, the dieting industry can be, and the fitness industry can be very much all or nothing, can't it? And you would have been, there's nothing that you could have done that would have changed your circumstances. You couldn't have eaten a certain way. It wouldn't have mattered if you lost weight or not. You had a chronic condition that was not going to get better until you had surgery. So we were able to make space for that, and we were able to work with your limitations, and we was able to adapt and change things. And I remember sometimes we would turn up and we would just stretch,
yeah,
or we made the sessions work for you, and that it was a beautiful experience for me too, to be able to do that for someone. So the work really impacts me as well, and
yeah,
it gives me such joy to be able to create space for people to like exercise on their own terms. And from day to day, sometimes I have clients that turn up, they're like, sometimes they just want to have a chat, because
yeah,
they don't want to necessarily exercise, but they want to keep the routine of
yeah.
meeting and
Showing up.
showing up. Yeah. So it really is such an empowering way to embrace our bodies, I believe. and
It is,
and
yeah.
it creates that longevity, doesn't it? Like, you've gone through the pain of like waiting for the hip replacement and having to experience that, to having the surgery, to like now being on the other side of it, and throughout that
And
time.
now,
Yeah.
so we did take a break for the 6 weeks around the surgeries because
Mhm.
that was really intense. I had really specific needs, but then we
Yeah.
started up again.
Hmm.
And it's about a year now. It's a year and 2 months, I think, post surgery. And now I'm beginning to work with weights.
Yes.
And I remember actually was that when I was in my mid 20s and I did weight train. My boyfriend at the time was a bodybuilder,
Hmm.
and he was engaging in all kinds of really bad behaviors, like really self-abusive. But
Yeah.
it's what you do when you are in the bodybuilding industry.
Hmm.
But because of him, I got into weightlifting at the time, weight training, which I really enjoyed. But it just kind of went, by the way. But now you and I are starting to work with weights again, and like twice. And I've never experienced this, except I'm just remembering then in my 20s for that very brief period,
Hmm.
actual joy, actual joy in our times together. And I'm like, what is going on?
I know.
This is fun. And I have never, I'm 59 years old. And with the one exception of that brief time in my 20s, I have never experienced joy, quote
I'm just
unquote,
making note of
working
that.
out.
I love it. And I think as well, I know there's more and more women with lifting weights, but it's not necessarily the thing that we've grown up seeing.
No, that's right.
It's like it's a very like, it's not a new concept, but it's very new that it's so mainstream and widespread. And isn't it amazing to like be able to hold those weights and do things that we didn't think that we would normally do? And like, now we're discussing you getting heavier weights because you need to move up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I love experiencing that joy with you as well. And what I love as well is that we've done it all at your own pace and in a way that
Yeah.
feels comfortable. Like, there's
Yeah.
no pressure.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we had them. You said get them in case you want them, right?
mhm.
Little weights. And I remember like the hand weights, uh, we experimented with those, but I really started using them every time because I was like, hey, you didn't say go get your weights. I was like, hey, I think I can do this with the weights.
Yeah.
And then now we have the leg weights. And I remember thinking, you know what? I think I can do this with the weights.
Mhm.
It came from inside me, the idea. I mean, you opened the door, so I had the tools.
Yeah.
But the consistent work with them came because my body said to me, hey, I think I can do this. And so we tried it and I could.
Yeah. I love that intuitive pull as well
Yeah.
to do things, because like I get like that. So I'm consistent with weights. That's my joy. But I do get pulled to do different cardio. Like, that seems to be the thing that's flexible for me. And I'd like being able to answer that and like do the what my body's intuitively telling me to do, rather than like doing it for this outcome or this thing. So it's nice, isn't it, to be able to hear it first
Yeah,
and
yeah,
hear the call and go with it and see how it
yeah.
feels. But I am so excited that you find joy in weights.
Me too.
So, to bring things to an end, how would you like what if you could just give, say, a person who is fed up with diet culture, but they not quite sure about the non-diet thing. I suppose would what kind of advice would you give them of why this is a good place to start, maybe?
Well, I'm a therapist and I work with entrepreneurs, right?
Hmm.
Um, and when people ask me how to choose a good therapist, how to start with therapy, how do you know? And there's been a lot of talk in the therapy industry about evidence-based and gold standard and CBT and all that kind of stuff. And people think that they need to look for somebody who specifically got X or Y,
Hmm.
when really it's the relationship. First and foremost, you have to find somebody with whom you feel safe, comfortable. If safety is kind of like a complicated word, but comfortable,
Yeah.
and comfortable enough to be vulnerable.
Hmm.
And I think it's exactly the same to begin when you're on your anti-diet or non-diet journey and you want to work with somebody around moving your body, to pay attention to who helps you feel comfortable in your mind, and that in your body you have a body sense of like, the body sense of like, I'm not sure, right? Like I'm making the body movement. This is going to be on YouTube too. So but I'm making a body movement of like my body's kind of pulling back and my hands are in front of me, kind of palms facing forward. My eyes are kind of wide, my eyebrows are kind of up. I kind of have this like kind of semi-startled look on my face. Like we all know that feeling,
Yeah.
right? And the opposite of that also is like my shoulders are down, my hands are in my lap, my breath is coming, my body's not tight. And you can kind of notice when you engage with someone's material or you
Mhm.
watch them on a video when they're doing a reel or something, you can notice what happens in your body when you see them and when you engage with their stuff, when you read their words. And this kind of movement journey requires a lot of vulnerability, especially because of all the harm we've experienced
Yeah.
previously. And the parts of us that are anxious and afraid about being made to feel like shit again, shamed
Mhm.
and blamed, that to find this comfort, this comfortable feeling, and this sense of connection uh, is what will guide you, I think, in working with any professional, but especially professionals with whom you have to be vulnerable, like a fitness professional.
Mhm.
Um, and especially non-diet or anti-diet folks. And for me, that's how it was with you. Um, I know relatable is a big word, but relatable, like I felt I could, I felt like you understood what I was going through because of how you were sharing about your opinions, but also your own experience.
Mhm.
Um, and it made me will, and we had a long, you'll remember we had a long conversation first because I was really apprehensive. And I
Yeah.
think that's another really important thing, is that the person is willing to have a free conversation with you first
Mhm.
before you engage in any kind of paid relationship with them, because that's the moment too where you get to really explore how your body responds, how
Yeah.
your mind and spirit and emotions respond to that person is in interaction with them.
Mhm.
So, those are the two things. Find somebody who will do a free call, and you find them on the basis of how you feel when you interact with um their presence, however they convey that in whatever form of advertising you engage with.
I love that. And do you know what? I actually think that is the first step to learning to trust your body, you
Yeah.
know, because that's what this is kind of about as well. We are relearning how to be guided by ourselves and to be guided by what our body wants and needs. And then learning to trust our body's reactions and responses to things. So that is actually a perfect way for us to start doing that, is notice how you respond to the person, notice how your body feels when you're in contact with them, and like you say, when you're reading their work. And that's why I know not everybody likes to do Zoom calls, so I do offer the opportunity to have the consultation via email. But the reason why I always offer a free Zoom chat is for that reason alone. Like, come and meet me first, figure out if I am the kind of person that you're going to vibe with, that, you know, do you like me? It's kind of like about giving my potential client a chance to meet me and decide for themselves whether I am the person that's going to be that space, you know.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. And by the way, I get so much from my clients too. Like, I find joy in our sessions together. I've absolutely loved working with you. And you know, like when you did have your time away with your operation, I really missed you.
I did too. I really missed it. Yeah, it is a relationship. It's a very special relationship. Yeah.
It is. And I think, like you said, because there's so much vulnerability is in it, you do develop a connection of sorts. So
Yes.
um it's a lot more involved than just giving someone sets and reps and time, you know. So
Yeah.
yes, I love that we can offer an alternative, because it's not to take away. Some people still want the focus on weight loss, and people
Fine.
are allowed to have autonomy, but I think this is a very much needed alternative that, you know, opens it up to different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that those of us who are doing things differently are there for those who want that.
Mm-hmm.
No shade on the other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? People who want those, have access to those. And people who want this have access to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being my first
Thank
little
you,
podcast
Karen.
interview. And I really hope that people are able to see from the client experience as well how this can be so empowering and supportive of people's individual circumstances, really.
Yeah.
But
Thank
yes, so
you.
do you want to just let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. I'm known as the entrepreneur's therapist, and I work one-to-one with women entrepreneurs who want to care for their mental and emotional well-being and their money psychology in an era where doing business can make you feel like there's relentless stressors that make you want to lose your crap on the daily. And if you're interested in learning more about those things, my website is shula.ca, shula.ca.
Thank you so much, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Bye.
Bye.